Hello, today I'm going to be taking a look at the new Akkari Spider Elf faction for Legends of Signum. This is currently on Kickstarter. Okay, so I'm going to be taking a look at one of the two new Cursed Forest factions for Legends of Signum. This is the starter set for the Akkari Spider Elves. So this is a pre-production copy they've sent. So some parts are from their previous game. And other parts are prototypes, so you have to bear that in mind. First thing you get is the playmat. So Legends of Signum is played on a 60 centimeter square or 2 foot square if you use old money. And it's the same mat that they've had before, so it's quite nicely detailed and laid out. Next up, you get essentially your play sheet. So, but if you haven't seen the game before, it is a mixture of collectible card game and board game. So this explains how you read a card, how you actually play your turn. There's a few different things going on with the game, apart from the actual tabletop fight that goes on the mat itself. Here we have a list of all of the various abilities that exist in the game. The other side of the map has a playthrough of a turn. So it's handy to have close to hand when you're playing, especially the glossary down the side here. It's only that thin strip, but while you're learning what the card mechanics are, it's handy to have it close to hand. You get a set of 6 dice that have 3 symbols on them, so essentially a D3. You've got 2 bullseyes, 2 axes, and 2 shields with axes, and that's used for your melee and combat attacks. And then we get into the various templates. So everything has a set movement. These are given in centimeters, but they're only referred to by short, medium, long, and extra long, so you don't need to worry about the actual distances on them unless you want to use just a tape measure. You also get your various terrain templates. So there are some unique ones per faction, plus generic. So we have generic rocks and forest. But then also for the Akkari, they get a foggy forest, poisonous thicket, and some spiderweb mushrooms. And those are key in the game later on. You get quite a lot of decks of cards as well. So first off, you get what are called the terrain cards, and then you also get your city cards, your building cards. So in a turn, you can build one of these specific buildings, and they will give you bonuses in game. So if you're familiar with the likes of Magic the Gathering or that sort of thing, you can tap a building to activate the ability. But what you can also do is tap the building to use it. So for example, this counts as a barracks. This Skull of Magic has its own specific symbol. And when you come to use cards from your battle deck, they will either tell you that they will cost you a specific amount of prosperity or a specific amount of buildings to get them onto the tabletop to cast them. So you may find something that has 3 generic buildings to put out, or you might find that very specific ones have to be put out. So these are available. You can only put 1 out a turn, or you can choose to forego that and instead gain 2 additional prosperity, because prosperity is a way you can win. Speaking of winning, this is your hero. So every faction has a hero, but then you can also have characters, and in this expansion, minions. However, the important people are the heroes. You only ever have 1. They have a strength, which is used in combat, either combat or defense. They also have their movement and they have their wounds. If your opponent is reduced, or their hero is reduced to 0 wounds, they lose. Simple as that. Various relics can be drawn from your hand during a turn, but they can only be equipped if the relevant slot is shown here. So you have masks, banners and shields, armor, ranged weapon, rings. So not every hero has the same types of relics available, so you can only equip one per slot. And that brings us to our battle deck itself. So these are constructed in a similar way to most collectible card games. You have a minimum and a maximum. So it's a minimum of 20 in a deck, I think a maximum of 40, and then there are restrictions on what can be in here, so you must have at least half of the number of cards being characters, and they have to be unique. You can't double up, so you can't spam a specific character to try and win. So these are some of the other models that exist in the starter set. So Cursed Forest, Wolf and Priest, Rik the Crusher, it's multi-limbed elf Spearman. You also have the aforementioned relics, so this tells you it's armor, and also specifically for Queen of Sorrow, when your minion dies you can summon a minion in contact with your hero, so it's nice. So we have these relics, of which there are several. After the relics we have tactic cards. So these are playable in your turn, and here you see, for example, this requires just 3 of any building to be tapped, and when you put it into play you don't reveal it to your opponent. Instead you keep it covered, so just face down beside a hero, and when an opponent's creature receives X damage it receives X additional wounds. In addition, your hero is healed by X. Now this doesn't have to be automatically triggered. For example, if you kill a 1 wound minion, you don't want to waste that tactic. Instead you choose when you reveal it. You have to tell your opponent it's going to be played, but they don't know what it is or when it's going to be activated. So you just go, I've got a tactic card in play, and then when you do that 5 wound combo on somebody, then you can reveal it and heal yourself for 5. There's a few other tactic cards, and then after that we hit our spells. And here's a prime example where you need 1 generic building of any type, then you also need your School of Magic and your City Hall, I think that is, possibly a library. And in this case these spells are played automatically and then discarded, so you can eliminate a minion to heal your hero by 3. And we have a set of those as well. Having looked at the cards for them, I'll have a look at some of the miniatures. So this beauty, who's about 12 centimeters tall, from base to tip of claw, this is the Queen, and as you can see she's some sort of monstrous, well, wasp-like insect, I'm going to say. There's some beautiful detailing throughout. You've got this, I suppose, clutch of eggs, and this one that she has in her hand that's a bit larger. You may not be able to pick it up on the camera. No. There's actually a little face on the front of this that she's whispering sweet nothings to. We just see tons of little, one of my beard hairs. You see tons of little spiders crawling in and throughout and around her wings. So you've got this nice mix of detail, so you could do it quite easily, or you have these lovely flat panels where you can do an awful lot of additional freehand painting if you want to, which is something that you see a lot with the Signum models. You have this choice between the bare minimum or ultra detail, depending on how much you enjoy painting. Having a look then at Nari Tiz, the Akkari Spearman. And when I initially looked at him, I thought, oh, he's got options for weapons. And then I started putting them together and realised, no, he just has multiple limbs, taking the spider part of the Akkari Elves really to heart. Next up, we'll have a look at one of the larger characters. This is Rik the Crusher. And again, he has that elfin look. He does have the pointed ears, but at the same time, very beetled. He also comes with an alternative head. So this one has got an elf face with multiple eyes on it, but you also get the option for this crested helm, which is quite nice. But lovely model. And again, that nice blend of acres of space and just enough detail if you want to do washes and dry brushes. We'll bring in the Infested Wolf and Priest. If you were to ask me, I wouldn't have said he was a priest, but there you go. And this really shows the mutations, where you've got these chitinous carapace armour, the hinged mandibles where his jaw used to be, and at the same time it's noticeably a wolfen. It's very distinct, but just hideously tormented and tortured, which I think we all want in our wolfen. Again, gorgeous sculpt. The nice thing about Legends of Signum are the resin miniatures. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and it makes it a little bit more expensive than if they'd been in plastic or PVC, but the quality you get out of them is just divine. This is Arden, the Witch of the Cursed Forest. And again, spiders throughout, in this case, floating on those wreaths of smoke. Like the repeating patterns and the styling coming through again of all the insects. And I don't know if the face is being picked up on camera there. I hope so. But such exquisite detail. I have had to put her together twice because I did drop her because I'm clumsy, unfortunately. So you may be able to see some of the glue lines are a bit more noticeable than others. That's just down to me being cack-handed. But again, beautiful sculpt. So those are the basics of what you would get when you're buying any faction. But what this game brings in is a solo mode. So I'm going to very briefly touch on that because I could spend all day on it. First off, you get a tracker. And this tracker is two-sided. So you see you have these large breakdowns on one side. So this is actually the rage points. And on the other side we have the honor points, which go up incrementally. And this is a core mechanic of the game. You start with 0 honor, and you have to do quests. And this quest mode can either be played as a player versus environment solo game, or it can be played as a player versus player version where you have a real person playing the AI, playing the overlord, and it changes slightly how the game is played. So for example, every turn the overlord will get an amount of rage points equal to the bracket you're in. So you start with 0 honor, and every time you complete a quest or kill a bandit, it will go up. So every turn while you're in this band of honor, your AI or your opponent will get 3 rage points to play with. The next band at 6 rage points, and these can be spent every turn on specific cards, which we'll get into in a second. At the end of the game, you see whether or not you've won, or the opponent has won, or the overlord has won. So if you're in the 10 bracket, then that's a hero victory. Because you're right up this end. If you are unfortunately sitting down the bottom end in the 3 bracket, then that's an overlord victory because he has just wiped you out, essentially. So every turn that is calculated based on the quests you're playing. So these quests are made for what's the best way to put this? These quests are separated, let's put it like that. These quests are separated into 2 sets. So you have 3 daylight ones, as you can see from the sun symbol, and then 12 night symbol, so sort of harder quests. And the game turn, whether you're playing PvE or PvP in the quest mode, starts the same way. You shuffle both sets separately and then put the day ones on top, because day ones are slightly easier. And when you play, you can have up to 2 quests active. So if these were our quests, we would say this one came out first because you wouldn't play them both in the same turn. You'd start off placing a rock terrain onto the battlefield and summoning 4 evil eyes. The evil eyes receive wounds from poison on a bullseye, axe, put a prosperity card on it, da 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 da. So you start off with when it's played, so time of day. Any terrain or special things you need to do, the actual mechanics of the card, and therefore the tokens that are put into play. And then at the end you get quest completed. So when no evil eyes are on the battlefield, you've completed the quest, and you gain prosperity from this card and 2 honor. Summoning sickness is a little bit different. No terrain is put into place, but these are the requirements. Your hero receives a wound whenever you summon a minion if you don't have the library and the Skull of Magic constructed. So you don't have to have them out, and it's your choice as to when you build these. But if you don't, you're going to take a wound if you summon any minions. The quest completed whenever you get these 2 out, and then you gain your honor and prosperity. So it's fairly simple. At the end of every phase, you have a quest phase, and the first thing you do is see if you've completed one, and if you've completed it, it gets removed, and you get the relevant rewards. Or you see if you failed them. So, see if I find a failure. I think I know one who's a failure. Here we go. So later on in the game, this could be sitting out. So the quest is completed when there are 3 prosperity on the quest card. The quest is failed when the caravan is eliminated. So you test to see if you've completed first, and then you test to see if you failed. So if you've completed, you remove it. Happy days. If you failed, that then goes to the overlord, and at the end of the game, it's counted negatively towards your score. So the game might not end because you've died. It could end because somebody's run out of cards and they can't play any further, at which point you see whether or not you've won. If you can't play a quest card, if you've got 2 quests in play, at that point then other cards come into play. So we have these 2 decks. One is PvE, of which there are 10, and the other is PvP, of which there are 22. And they do something similar. If you have an opponent playing while you're playing the quest mode, they get the larger PvP deck. They get a hand of these, and they draw 1 every turn. So they start off with 4, and they can draw 1 at the start of a turn. And what these do is they allow the overlord to determine how he's going to spend his rage points. So here we see for 2 rage points, a chosen character skips its turn. So a character is not a hero. So it will never be, it can't be used on your boss unless it says it's specifically a hero, but one of the minions that you summon in, one of your characters that you summon, gets stopped. Now that's 2 rage. If you happen to be in a later turn where you've got multiple rage, your opponent could use that to nullify 4 of your characters, leaving your hero completely alone. For 2 rage points, up to 3, the most expensive buildings cannot be used during the next turn, so on and so forth. So when you're playing PvP, your opponent has these options of how he's going to spend his rage and how he's going to move his minions around to try and take you out. If you're playing PvE though, if you're playing solo, it plays a little differently. If you can't draw another quest card, so if you've already got 2 quests in play, then one of these is drawn randomly instead. And at this point, you would then follow the instructions as far as you can. So 2 rage points will summon a bandit into contact with your hero. And again, that's multiple times. So there are caps on how many you can have in the game. But if you were sitting with 6 rage points, then 3 bandits would be summoned into contact with your hero, if possible. So there's like a self-balancing mechanism where when you're playing solo, the creatures are a bit more predictable, but the downside of that is you get these things that come up. So whereas before, if it was PvP, there we are. If it was PvP, your opponent had to spend rage to do it. In this case, if this card is flipped, there's no rage cost, so up to 3 most expensive buildings cannot be used next turn. As you start to play through the game in a solo version, the further up this tracker you get towards victory, the more rage points are available for the AI overlord, which means very quickly you can find yourself overwhelmed if you are completing quests too quickly or taking risks to kill bandits or whatever happens to be very, very fast. You can push yourself up here before you've gotten to a position where you can actually get enough characters out and enough cards from your battle deck to actually help you win. So you never want to try and go too quickly, too fast. At the same time, if you're too slow, then you're not going to get the honor and you'll lose by default. So you have to try and strike a happy medium where you can get up this tracker at the same time that you can progress and actually get the cards out that you need to help you win, which I think is fascinating. So that is the Akkari. So there you go. Obviously bear in mind it is a prototype, so not all of the components are in their final form, but it does show you there's an awful lot in these starter sets, not just for the standard Legends of Signum game, but for this new quest mode, this sort of solo or PvP version of the game, which is a very different spin on your standard sort of tabletop game. Although to be fair, Legends of Signum is a very different spin on your standard tabletop board game already. Stunning models, and it's really interesting to see where they're going to go from here. So I'm going to move on. If you've any questions, drop them below, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.